All right. So we're picking up the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna and taking a look at his life. He was talking last week, kind of talking about managing managing purity, I guess, walking that straight and narrow edge of the razor. And he was talking to a group of boys that he called the youngsters, and he was giving him those instructions on how to maintain well, I don't know. It's always uncomfortable talking about these things as a monk, but how to maintain sexuality and how to keep it in the right tracks and keep it as an advantage to yourself rather than a detriment to yourself. And he was talking about how to manage and help your self-control, by being aware of what you're putting into your senses, through your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your ears, because that's your offering to the divine spirit, to the divine principle within. And that which you offer are the prayers that get answered. And that includes things that are good for you and even seemingly bad for you. Bad for you in the sense that they're counter to your nature, right? Anything that takes you toward away from love, wisdom, and being. Anything that is selfish, anything that is undoing love, anything that is not expansive, moving toward unity. Those things are unhelpful, and when we do them, our lives get hurt, become uh, painful to us, become misery to us. And so all of these, as a kid growing up going to church, I thought that God hated a good time, and that basically he just made a whole bunch of rules to make sure that none of us had a good time. And then I grew up and I realized that what I thought was a good time was horribly detrimental to my mental well-being, to my physical well-being, to my relationships. And so I began to understand what Vivekananda really put in a wonderful sentence. He said, God is not, does not, uh, it's, what did he say? Uh, that does not God is not trying to ruin your enjoyment in this world. He's trying to teach you. The scriptures are not there to ruin your enjoyment of the world. The scriptures are there to teach you how to enjoy the world, so you don't get stuck, right? So that you don't get caught in tracks of addiction or tracks of habit that are very difficult to overcome. That can ruin your life or can make your life very difficult. And so he was talking to a group of youngsters last week and kind of giving them points on this. And we pick up today where he starts off asking this question. Can you tell me why do all of these youngsters, and you people too, I guess meaning the older folks in the room, you and me, why do you guys visit me? Why are you here right now? Why are you interested in the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna? What is there to know? He says, there must be something in me, or why should you all feel such a pull, such an attraction? He says, once I visited Hriday's house at Sihor, and from there I was taken to Shyambazar. I had a vision of Koranga before I entered the village, and I realized that I should meet Koranga's devotees there. For 7 days and nights, I was surrounded by a huge crowd of people. Such attraction. Nothing but kirtan and dancing day and night. People stood in rows on the walls and were even in the trees. I stayed at Natavar Goswami's house. It was crowded day and night. In the morning, I would run away to the house of the weaver for a little rest. There, too, I found that people would gather after a few minutes. They carried drums and cymbals with them, and the drum constantly played, Takuti, Takuti. We would have our meal at 3 in the afternoon. The rumor spread everywhere that a man had arrived who died 7 times and came back to life again. Hriday would drag me away from the crowd to a paddy field for fear that might have an attack of heat apoplexy. The crowd would follow us there like a line of ants. Again, the cymbals and the never-ending takuti takuti of the drums Hriday scolded them, and they said, "Why do you bother us like this? Have we never heard kirtan?" The Vaishnava priests of the village came and almost started a quarrel. They thought I would take their share of the fees from the devotees. But soon they discovered that I didn't touch a piece of cloth or even a thread. Someone remarked that I was a Brahmagyani, so the Vaishnava pundits wanted to test me. One said, "Why hasn't he beads? You know, the Rudraksha beads. Why doesn't he have the mark on his forehead?" Another of them replied, "They have dropped from him as the dry branch from a coconut tree." It was there that I learned this illustration of the dry branch of a coconut tree. The upadis, the limitations, they drop when one attains knowledge, right? So it's this knowledge of who you are that makes you free, that gives you freedom. How does it do that? Because the knowledge of your inner divinity, that unrealized potential within, is the answer to all of your dissatisfaction. It's the calm for your restless mind. But it must be realized, it must be seen, right? You have to know that you've lost your cell phone in your back pocket, as it were. So these upadis, what are these upadis? The limitations. Anything that you use to describe yourself, any adjective that you use to describe yourself is an upadi. It's a limitation because if you're white, you're not black. If you're tall, you're not short. If you're male, you're not female. You know, if you're American, you're not, well, but that's hard because nationalities can mix. But you see the idea, but anything, if you marry this person, by necessity, you have rejected everyone else on the planet, right? And so all of your attributes, all the things you've come to identify yourself are limitations. That's why Ramakrishna says that this universe, it rests in freedom. It manifests in bondage and it returns to freedom, right? And the reason that it does that is because in freedom, it's beyond attribute. It's one without a second, limitless, ever free, ever pure, you know. Then it comes into existence, it manifests, so it has to take on limitations, boundaries, so that you can have objects and people and planets and suns and moons and this and that and all the others, right? So it comes into bondage and we experience this bondage. And then when it passes back, it all passes back into absolute freedom, pure potential, infinite being. Right? So people came thronging from distant villages. They even spent the night there. At Shiambazar, I learned the meaning of divine attraction. When God incarnates himself on earth, he attracts people through the help of Yoga Maya, his divine power. People become spellbound. Right? So basically, we're watching, you know, Thakur in his eyes was just a poor village, uh, temple priest and not even a reputable one. It was owned by a kshatriya or built by a kshatriya. It wasn't even built by a brahmin, and that he was there and took care of the Kali image there. And so he couldn't understand. It's like, why, all these people kept coming to see him, and now you see that he's in the midst of his, the major part of his work, and there's thousands thronging to follow him, chase him everywhere, not giving him a moment away. And he's like, what is going on? Right? What is happening here? What is all these things? And so he's learning. He says, I learned, the meaning of divine attraction, that this is a characteristic of the incarnation. That whenever he comes, throngs follow him. We saw Jesus in Thursday night's class. There on the Sea of Galilee with 7,000 people following him, wanting to find out what he had to say. And, the crowds followed him everywhere. So every time that the beloved comes, people know him. And it may not be that they know what he is or may not know anything of his history, but they can sense the oneness. The heart is pulled. The heart knows, if Jesus looked at you, you would want to talk to him. You know, if Buddha put his hand on your shoulder, you would not pull away. You would just feel such a love, such a tenderness, such a kindness in their gaze, in their presence, in their words. That their message was always to help you, always to help you go forward, always to help you become more than what you are, always an advantage to you. that they never spoke to you with any other motive, whether they were scolding you, lambasting you from one wall to the next. Every word out of their mouth you knew because it comes from the heart of pure love. You knew and felt in yourself that it was for your betterment, right? And it's not until your ego gets offended that suddenly it clouds it and you're fighting with everything. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the master had been conversing with the Mukherjee brothers and the other devotees when Radhika Goswami, a Vaishnava scholar, arrived and bowed down before him. This was his first visit to the master. Radhika Goswami took a seat. Master, are you a descendant of Advaita? Goswami, yes, sir. At this, the master saluted him with folded hands. The master, you are descended from Advaita Goswami. You must have inherited some of his traits, right? And this is where that idea of respect for good families comes in, or respect based on, someone's lineage comes from. Right? You must have inherited some of his traits. A sweet mango tree produces only sweet mangoes, arid, not sour ones. Of course, it happens that some trees produce large mangoes and some small. That depends on the soil. Isn't that true? Goswami humbly. Sir, what do I know? Master, whatever you may say, others will not let you off so easily. Brahmins, however imperfect they may be, are worshipped by all on account of their having been born in the lines of great sages. To M, tell us the story of the Samkachila, right? So he's giving us a little bit of insight into the culture that brings us these truths and these teachings, in this idea of why are Brahmins, so important. It's something that we kind of struggle with when we're introduced to the culture at first, because they have such a privilege and such a respect in the history and in the culture of that society. And you just can't wonder. It's like, why were they so protected? Why were they so respected and revered? And you come to know over the years, I realized that back when the Vedas were not written, when they were only chanted, when they were verbally passed on for thousands of years before they were actually written down, it was the Brahmins who had to memorize them. I learned from Swami Tattwamayananda in San Francisco that his family is a traditional Brahmin family that uh, uh, memorized their family's section of the Vedas that they were responsible for bringing to one generation to the next. He started memorizing that Sanskrit when he was 3 years old. He would have to sit for several hours every day and memorize his family's section of the Vedas. And the seriousness of that, I mean, the amount of memorization that he had to do. It's amazing because I saw him at one of the retreats and for a question and answer session. And he's the first and only Swami that I've ever seen who didn't give any of his own answers. That anytime someone asked a question, he would literally chant the page of the Vedas that the answer was on in Sanskrit, go through and give a full rendition of it, translation of it in English, and then give you commentary on the section that answered your question. And I was like, wow, that's that's real scholarship. But that's where I understood. You see, if you killed a Brahmin, you might be wiping out a whole section of the Vedas that are then lost because they weren't written down. And so that's why the culture protected them and respected them so much. All right, and put a lot of restrictions on them so that they had to pretty much stay spiritual. They weren't allowed to really get involved. They do nowadays, but this is back in the traditional days where they weren't really allowed to be engaged in mercantile activities or things like that. They were really set apart to maintain the spiritual ideal for the culture. And so that was the reason. And from them, because of those restrictions and those requirements and those expectations, a lot of the sages, many of the sages, came through those lineages. And so that helped, to maintain that respect and to hold on to that space. And it's one of the things that does boggle my mind, and one of the things that I really am grateful for, because I think about what kind of country could have been responsible for propagating scripture for 10,000 years. You know, you look at the United States right now. We're not even we're just over 200 years old. We haven't propagated anything. We change everything from day to day. We forget all of our wisdom. You know, you can see it in our politics. No memory at all of what needs to be done and what should be done. And so I really honor, you know, I read this and I really want to share that kind of honor for India in a sense, you know, because it is an incredible task, an incredible feat that they have managed to propagate a philosophy in its pure form without losing its purity and its accuracy for literally close to 10,000 years. It's amazing. It's beautiful. And I, for one, I mean, it changed my life. You know, that's it certainly gave me a very interesting one, you know, and so this is something we should be grateful for and something we should acknowledge and respect in that same way. So Swami Goswami, sir, what do I know? He says, yes, but you've come from a long line of sages. Tell us the story of Samkachila. M sat in silence. The master. If one of your ancestors was a great soul, he will certainly pull you up, however unworthy you may be. When King Duryodhana and his brothers were taken captive by the Gandharvas, Yudhishthira released them in spite of the fact that King Duryodhana was his enemy and had banished him to the forest. Besides, one must show respect to the religious garb. Even the mere garb recalls the mind the real object. Chaitanya once dressed an ass in a religious garb and then prostrated himself before it. This is an interesting thing because this actually turned out to be very important to me when I took my sannyas vows. Because one of the teachings in one of our classes leading up to our taking the vows was exactly that, like how to digest, especially being in India. If you're a sadhu, if you're a monk in India, the amount of respect, well, if you're within within the realm of the devotees, the amount of respect that you're shown is quite unnerving for a Westerner at least. You know, it's like suddenly it's funny because you know you go to India as a brahmachari, and a brahmachari is somebody who nobody wants an opinion from. Nobody's going to ask the brahmachari anything unless it's something they need, right? Go get me a glass of water. So he goes to India in that state. He goes through this 10-day ritual, you know, becomes a sannyasin, comes back to his home center in the United States. He gets off the plane, and at the airport, people are laying on the ground of the airport to take the dust of his feet, right? And you're just like, oh, wait a minute. You know, before I got back, I was washing your toilets. Why now are you laying on the floor taking the dust of my feet, right? And it's a big change and it's a big challenge. It was for my mind. And one of the classes that we had at Bellarmade was how to deal with that, how to understand what that is about. And that one of the things they said, and just like Ramakrishna here is saying, one must show respect to the religious garb. We were taught that when people bow down, take an Ashtanga pranam in front of you and take the dust of your feet, it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with the ideal that is being represented by the robes you're wearing, by the color you're wearing, that it's saluting the ideal. It's not saluting you. It's encouraging you. It's cheering you on. Keep going. Try harder. But it's actually honoring the ideal itself. And so when you see that, it's easier to digest as a Westerner if you see it that way and understand that it's not the person being revered. Some people, it might be the person because they just might have that level of love mastered. But for most people, it's an honoring of the garb, an honoring of the ideal itself. Right? And so this is how what Chaitanya was when he dressed an ass, dressed a donkey in ochre cloth, and then saluted it. He wasn't ridiculing it. He was making the point. It's the cloth, it's the ideal, it's the commitment, the renunciation that we honor, not the thing that's wearing it, right? Why do people bow before the Samkachila? When Kamsa was about to kill the Divine Mother, she, uh-oh, I've got a word that's wrong here. She drew away, taking the form of a Samkachila. So even now, people salute that bird. Oh, she flew away. She flew away, taking the form of a Samkachila. So even now, people salute the bird. An Englishman arrived in the cantonment of Chanak. The sepoys saluted him. Kaur Singh explained to me, India is under the rule of the English. Therefore, one should salute an Englishman. The Shaktas followed the Tantra and the Vaishnavas the Purana. There is no harm for the Vaishnavas in speaking publicly of their spiritual practices. But the Shaktas maintain secrecy about theirs. For this reason, it is difficult to understand a Shakta. To Goswami, you are all good people. How much japa you practice? How much you chant the name of Hari? Goswami humbly, oh no, we do very little. I am a great sinner. Master smiling, well, you have humility. That is good. But there is also another way. I chant the name of Hari. How can I be a sinner? He who constantly repeats, I am a sinner, I am a wretch, verily becomes a sinner. What a lack of faith! A man chants the name of God so much, and still he talks of sin. Right? So he's showing us a new way, right? It's a very common religious practice to be self-demeaning. Oh, I'm such a sinner. Oh, I'm sinful. Oh, wretched me. Oh, I'm such a wretch. Especially we've we've read some in our Vedic Christian class. We've run into lots of that, especially when reading the Philokalia. This constant, I'm a wretch, I'm a wretch, I'm a wretch, I'm a wretch, which everybody gets. The importance of that is death of the ego, humility, right? That's what is trying to be shown. But Ramakrishna here is saying, see, if you go on saying that, that's what fills your mind. You say the word sin, sin can't help but manifest because the name and form always go together. So if you walk around saying, I'm a sinner you will be. And we sort of get to see from the examples of life that that's true. A lot of that it's very difficult to live a pure life, especially if you're running around identifying with sinfulness. And so he says, what's the way to do it? The way to do it is said, look, I've chanted God's name even once. I've called God's name. I've prayed. How can I be a sinner? Right? Not because you're great for having prayed, but because through that prayer you've touched something like grace. And so you are not to identify with being fallen in Christian speak. You're not to identify with being separated from your divine beloved. Now you re-emphasize what your nature is and not what your ego self is. So you always remind yourself, I'm ever free, I'm ever pure, I'm ever beloved of the divine. I've never been born, I will never die. I am the one without a second, pure love. Right? And so we reinforce those attributes in ourselves all the time, especially when we're under attack from our own ego, our own conscience, attacking us. We still, we go forward and no, I'm ever free, I'm ever pure. Love will win here. That's my favorite little statement that I always tell myself whenever I get provoked or feel something, depressed or some sort of inner darkness. I always sit and go to where I'm feeling that in myself. And I always imagine just planting a flag of light there and just making the declaration, love will win here. All right, just making that declaration, not doing anything else. Just simply go and plant my flag, make the statement, love will win here, and then I carry on. And I found that to be a very positive and very powerful means of dealing with the dark inside. And so it's due to Ramakrishna, right? Do not go around calling yourself a sinner. That phase of your spiritual life is past and done. Now go forward, right? Radhika Goswami listened to these words in amazement. Master, at Vrindavan, I myself put on the garb of the Vaishnavas and wore it for 15 days. To the devotees, I have practiced the disciplines of all the paths, each for a few days. Otherwise, I should have found no peace of mind. Smiling, I have practiced all of the disciplines. I accept all of the paths. I respect the Shaktas. I respect the Vaishnavas. I respect the Vedantists. Therefore, people of all sects come here, and every one of them thinks that I belong to his school. I also respect the modern Brahmagyanis. This was one of the things that really sparked my little adventure in Colorado was this statement that everybody who came to Ramakrishna for teaching thought that he belonged to their own tradition. And when I heard that and contemplated what that meant, I found that to be a staggering statement. That means that he would have had to have been familiar with their scriptures and familiar with their philosophy and familiar with their mythologies, and that when he spoke to them, he would have to be using their phrases, their buzzwords, their whatnots, in a way that made them feel like, oh, he comes from my own tradition, right? So people came from him, all different kinds of traditions, and he was able to give, because of his broad-mindedness, because of his knowing of the oneness of all traditions, he was able to teach them and take them deeper in their practice. Every one of them thinks that I belong to his school. I also respect the modern Brahmagyanis. A man had a tub of dye. Such was its wonderful property that people could dye their clothes any color they wanted by merely dipping them in it. A clever man said to the owner of the tub, "Dye my cloth the color of your dye stuff." Everyone laughs. So this notion that, the world is that tub of dye. And you come into this world and you will color your mind based on what you put in it. So if you choose wisely, this is the whole point of being aware of our awareness, being present in the moment, so that we can make the right choices and see how we're coloring our mind, right? And what he's saying, the one who comes up in line and says, you know what, I want the color that's in the tub. I don't want a color of anything else. That's the spiritual seeker. Who am I? I don't want to be who I think I am. I don't want the color of the previous dipper, or I don't want an existing color. I don't want to become a fireman or any of those things. What am I? What am I that's native to me, that's not put on me, that's not covering over me? What is my cloth, in its pure form, in its color that's in the tub? And what is that color? And so that's what we're trying to do. That's why we're trying to quiet the mind, because the mind is the way that we are led into our bondage, because mind and body work together and convince us that that's who we are and that's what we are. And by running after their needs, we fall into these cyclical habits that keep us from being present and keep us looking, keep us desiring. So, dye my cloth the color of your dye stuff. Everyone laughs. Ramakrishna continues, why should I be one-sided, right? Why should I say that only this religion is true or only this path will take you to God? The idea that people of a particular sect will not come to me does not frighten me. I don't care a bit whether people come to me or not. The thought of keeping anyone under my control never crosses my mind. Adhar Sen asked me to ask the Divine Mother for a big position for him, but he didn't get it. If that makes him think differently about me, what do I care? Once at Keshav's house, I found myself in a new mood. The Brahmos always speak of the impersonal. Therefore, I said to the Divine Mother in an ecstatic mood, Mother, please don't come here. They don't believe in your forms. Radhika Goswami listened to these words of the Master against sectarianism and remained silent. The Master, smiling. Vijay is in a wonderful state of mind nowadays. He falls to the ground while chanting the name of Hari. He devotes himself to kirtan, to meditation and other spiritual practices till 4 in the morning. He now puts on an ochre robe and prostrates himself before the images of God. Once he accompanied me to Gadadar's schoolhouse. I pointed out the place where Gadadar used to meditate. At once, Vijay prostrated himself there. Again, he fell prostrate before the picture of Chaitanya Deva. Goswami, well, what about the image of Radha Krishna? Master, yes, he prostrated himself there too. Vijay also follows all the conventions of religious life. Goswami, how can he can now be accepted in Vaishnava society? Master, people's opinions don't much count with him. Goswami, I don't mean that. By accepting him, Vaishnava society will honor itself. Master, he respects me very much, but it is difficult to reach him. One day he called he is called to Dhaka, and the next day he's called to some other place. He's always busy. His presence has created great trouble in the Sadharan Brahmo Samaj. Goswami, why so, sir? Master, well, the Brahmos tell him, you mix with people who worship God with form. See, the Brahmos were distinctly uh, taught in their doctrine that God had no form. And so they wouldn't accept people that saw God with form. So the Brahmos tell him, you mix with people who worship God with form. You're an idolater. Vijay is liberal and straightforward. Unless a man is guileless, he doesn't receive the grace of God. Sri Ramakrishna talked to the Mukherjee brothers. Mahendra the elder had his own business. Priyanath the younger had been an engineer. After making some provision for himself, he'd given up his job. Mahendra was 35 or 36 years old. The brothers had homes both in the country and in Calcutta. Master smiling. Don't sit idle simply because your spiritual consciousness has been awakened a little. Go forward. Beyond the forest of sandalwood, there are many other more valuable things. There are silver mines and gold mines and so on. Priya, smiling. Sir, our legs are in chains. We can't go forward, right? See, that's the thing right there. He just finished telling us, you don't define yourself by your weaknesses. Don't define yourself by what you can't do. Don't go around saying I'm a sinner, I'm a wretch, right? And even framing yourself like this. Look what a story, an egoistic story he's created for himself by taking this attribute and identifying with it. Sir, our legs are in chains, we cannot go forward. Well, what can you do with that? If that's what you're telling yourself, my legs are in chains, I can't go forward. What? What is that? What is that? I find it interesting in the Christian scriptures, one of the names of Satan is the accuser, right? So that within yourself, which is always accusing you of being not good enough, not strong enough, not pure enough, not right enough, not good enough. That if you want to take that teaching from the Christian scripture, that's your ego self breaking you down to maintain its control over you, right? To maintain its charge over you. It does not want you to believe in grace because grace is the key that sets you free from your ego, gives you permission to walk away from it, to drop your identity with it. So, sir, our legs are in chains. We cannot go forward. The master. And what if they are chained? The important thing is the mind. Bondage is of the mind. Freedom is of the mind. Listen to a story. There were two friends. One went into a house of prostitution, and the other to hear a recital of the Bhagavata. What a shame, thought the first. My friend is hearing spiritual discourse, but just see what I have slipped down to. The second friend said to himself, this is the one that went to the Bhagavad Gita class. Shame on me, my friend is having a good time, but how stupid I am. After death, the soul of the first was taken to Vaikuntha by the messenger of Vishnu, while that of the second was taken to the netherworld of Yama. Right? So the guy who went, you see what he's saying, the guy that went to the brothel, but sat there regretting his choice and was thinking of his other friend who was doing the right thing and lamenting, why did I come to the brothel? He's the one that gets to go to Vaikuntha, the heaven, the realm of reward. And the other one who actually went to the Bhagavad Gita class, but sat there wishing he had gone to the brothel, he ends up going down to the realm of Yama, to the realm of death, what the Christians would call hell. And so he got stuck there. And so, see, it's your mind. It's not whether you go to church every day or not. It's not whether you practice every day or not. It's not what you do in this life that is important. It's how you do it. Are you sincere? Master says that's the number one requirement of spiritual life. Sincerity and earnestness. He places them always together in the same sentence. That's the number one requirement for spiritual life. Be sincere and be earnest about your effort. That is the important thing. The second thing, truth, right? Do what is true. And that truth involves an inner alignment between what you think, what you say, and what you do. You have to become a person of integrity for these teachings to take root and to actually express in you. If you don't have that alignment of between your words, your deeds, and your thoughts, then your words will never have any power. You will never be able to teach somebody or help somebody in any meaningful way. Your integrity as a person is utmost. So your commitment to truth and your commitment to love. Love is the one most important thing, right? So if you're sitting there and screaming at somebody for doing what's wrong, stop for a moment and say, gosh, is the motive behind my screaming love? Right? It's very important. It's like because a person, you can only correct a person to the degree that they believe you love them. You cannot correct somebody beyond that degree. And so if you're sitting there yelling at them for doing something wrong, ask yourself, have I ever yelled at them because I loved them? Have I ever worked this hard to express my love for them? Or do I only express myself at this volume when I'm angry at them? Right? So it's important. It's important to know. People can only hear you to the degree that they believe you love them. Right? And so it's important. That doesn't mean go pretend that you love everybody. That means purify your mind so that you do love everybody. Right? Because that sincerity has to come in there as well. Right? Priya, but the mind is not under my control, Master. Well, how is that? There is such a thing as abhishya yoga, yoga through practice. Keep up the practice, and you will find that your mind will follow in whatever direction you lead it. The mind is like a white cloth just returned from the laundry. It will be red if you dip it in a red dye and blue if you dip it in a blue one. It will have whatever color you dip it in. Right? So this is saying that yes, it's where you lay your attention. What is it in your mind that you're interested in? If your body calls for attention and then you immediately go and give your body attention, then you're going to be a body-bound person. You know, if you're constantly wanting to improve your love and running after things that put your mind on love, doing things that increase love. I remember having a conversation with someone one time. They're like, he didn't believe in God because he couldn't see God. And I said, well, God and love are synonyms. Do you believe in love? Well, who doesn't believe in love, right? Everybody believes in love. And I'm like, well, that is God. So maybe you don't believe in whatever God you think of in that word, but you believe in love. Right? So give yourself to that love. And if you want to see God, then practice loving people, and love will manifest in your life. If you are kind to others, they are kind to you. That will be seeing God. You'll see yourself transform people by the way that you love them, and you become acquainted with the power of love, the power of God. So if there's not enough God in life, if you haven't seen him or her or that, practice more love. Practice more, what's that bumper sticker? Practice random acts of kindness, right? Deeds of love. Go around doing that, and your life will become full of love, and you will see God. He is everywhere. Turning to Goswami, do you have anything you want to ask me? Goswami, no, sir. I'm satisfied with that I have seen you and have been listening to your words. Master, go and visit the temples. Goswami very humbly, won't you please sing something about Sri Chaitanya? The master complied and sang, Why has my body turned so golden? It is not time for this to be. Many sages that must pass before as Gauranga I appear. Again, Gora gazes at Vrindavan, and tears stream from his eyes. In an exuberance of joy, he laughs and weeps and dances and sings. He takes a wood for Vrindavan, the ocean for the blue Jamuna. He rolls on the ground for the love of Hari. After singing, the master went on with the conversation. That's a beautiful little thing there. Gora gazes at Vrindavan. You know, Vrindavan is the home of Krishna, and the play of that's uh, so Vrindavan would be Jerusalem to people, to the devotees of Krishna, in the same way that Jerusalem is interesting to the devotees of Jesus. And so Gora gazes at Vrindavan with tears streaming from his eyes. In an exuberance of joy, he laughs and weeps and dances and sings. And you see, so it's joy, right? Joy of what? The joy of grace, the joy of the fact that the universe is rooted in a divine love. Joy for the fact that we have hope of becoming what we've always dreamed of being for ourselves, our highest ideals, that we can learn, we can grow, we can express, right? And this grand joy is what gives birth to spiritual life, to religion in its true form, right? In an exuberance of joy, he laughs and weeps and dances and sings. He takes a wood for Vrindavan, the ocean for the blue Jamuna, right? So he's associating everything with God. He's in the woods, but he's thinking of Vrindavan. You know, this is Vrindavan. This is the wood where Krishna danced with the gopis around the fire. He sees the blue of the ocean, right? And immediately he's thinking of the Jamuna, the blue of the Jamuna River, where all the sages sit and do their practices on the banks of the river. Right? He rolls on the ground for the love of Hari. God is everywhere present, so he's just rolling in that presence, that divine ecstasy of union with the divine. After singing, the master went on with the conversation to Goswami. I have sung these songs to suit your Vaishnava temperament, but I must sing differently when the Shaktas or the others come. Here, people of all sects come, Vaishnavas, Shaktas, Katavarjas, Vedantists, and also members of the modern Brahmo Samaj. Therefore, one finds here all ideals and attitudes. It is by the will of God that different religions and opinions have come into existence. God gives to different people what they can digest. The mother does not give fish pilau to all of her children. All cannot digest it. So she prepares simple fish for some of them, and everyone cherishes his own special idea and follows his own nature. They provide various images for the Barori because people of different sects assemble at it. You see, there are images of Radha Krishna, images of Shiva Durga, and images of Sita Rama, different images in different places. A crowd gathers before each image. The Vaishnavas spend most of their time before the image of Radha Krishna, the Shaktas before Shiva Durga, and the devotees of Rama before Sita Rama. But it is quite different with those who are not spiritually minded at all. The Barari one sees another image also, a prostitute beating her paramour with a broomstick. Those people who stand there with gaping mouths and cry to their friends, "What are you looking at over there? Come over here and look at this." A prostitute beating her paramour. Right? So that's where the worldly people run. At the spectacle, right? So that's the question, like, what do we run after? What interests us? What grabs our attention? What do we fill our mind with? Right? Is it helpful to us being who we want to be? Radhika Goswami salutes the master and takes his leave. It was about 5 o'clock, and the master was on the semicircular west porch. Baburam and Latu and the Mukherjee brothers and M and some other devotees were with him. The master to M and the others. Why should I be one-sided? The Goswamis belong to the Vaishnava school, and they are very bigoted. They think that their opinion alone is right and all other opinions are wrong. My words have hit him hard, smiling. One must strike the elephant on the head with the goad. That is the elephant's most sensitive spot. Sri Ramakrishna told a few naughty jokes for the young men. Oh, God.
I've always wanted to know what those jokes were. And I
I
think
will.
somewhere in Bellarmont, they've got a vault with that locked in it. And I want to know what it is.
Yes, well, Bhagavan, when you find out, I want you to publish a book
I
titled The Dirty
will.
Jokes of Ramakrishna.
I will.
You'll be famous, I can guarantee it. Yeah, no, it's funny because he says this, and actually there is a gospel, the gospel that Nikhilananda translated, he kind of censored some of Ramakrishna's actual sayings in there, and kind of made them more digestible for the Western Victorian audience back at the turn of the century. But there's some pretty great statements in there, that if you get a copy of that um, uncensored version of the gospel, it's nothing terrible. It's pretty much the same like what we have. But the details of some of the jokes that he tells and some of the illustrations that he makes are quite they are they
I think it was Metananda who actually made a talk about Sri Ramakrishna's jokes at
oh
once,
wow.
but he didn't tell me what the dirty jokes were. Or not dirty, but the ones that we're talking about. It's like because I was hoping that he was going to go there, that it was known, but he didn't say.
No, yeah, that's yes. He didn't want to be that famous. But yes, no, he says, because he was challenged about it one time. Some Puritan guy was there when he was talking to the young men that way, and the guy saying, "What are you doing? Why are you saying things like that?" And Ramakrishna was like, "Oh, be quiet." He says, "They're young boys. You have to give them some fish soup every now and then, or they'll leave." Right? You have to give, and I just love that. You just never forget we're people. We're people. We're struggling. We're going forward and we embrace each other. And pretenses are not the important thing, right? The pretenses are not the important thing. And so
But I mean, could you imagine just being there and see it? That would just.
I do, I try. Yeah, I mean when I read these things, that's where my mind is. I always love to feel like I'm there hearing these things and even with how many hundreds of years between us and how many miles between us at this point, to the fact that we can sit and still be absorbed in his presence. That you can read these stories and find yourself weeping, find yourself laughing, finding yourself at peace, finding yourself inspired. You're right. What would it have been to sit in front of a person who was utterly sincere, who was utterly earnest, who was absolutely loving, who 100% of the time was out for your best interest? Someone who would never push you away, never send you away. That is quite of something. You're right to wonder about that question, and right to know that you will know at some point. Sri Ramakrishna told a few naughty jokes to the young men, the master to the devotees. I don't give the youngsters a pure vegetarian diet. Now and then I give them a little water smelling of fish. Otherwise, why should they come? The Mukherjee brothers left the porch. They went to the garden for a stroll. The master to M. I wonder whether the Mukherjees have taken offense at my jokes. M. Why should they? Captain said that you were like a child. After realizing God, a man becomes childlike. Master. Yes, and sometimes he behaves like a boy, and sometimes like a young man. As a boy, he is very light-hearted. He may use frivolous language. As a young man, he's like a roaring lion while teaching others. You had better explain my state of mind to the Mukherjees. I think that's the thing too. For a realized soul, there is no evil. For the realized soul, they see God everywhere in everything. And, because it's not the things, it's not the objects that are impure. It's the mind and the selfishness of the mind that covers these things that make them impure, right? All the prohibitions and cautions around sex are not because sex is good or bad, Sex is just a fact of life. It's the way things are. It's the way the world runs, right? In and of itself, it is what it is. It's how you use it, what you do with it, how you express it, what you use it for, that determine whether it's going to be helpful to you or destroy you. And it is one of the main focuses because it is probably the most powerful influence in our lives. If you're not a spiritual seeker, and even while you're a spiritual seeker, sometimes you question what's more powerful, right? And so this is the thing. We've got the two paths, householder and monastic. Both of them are going to struggle with that, and they deal with it in different ways. But it's extremely important that we don't come under the control and sway of our lusts and our longings, our desires. Don't define ourselves by them. It's like I think that's one of the most difficult things when sexualities became identities. That only happened in the second half of my life, really. When sexuality became identity, it's like, what is that? Somebody once told me in a conversation, that we are sexual beings. Like, what do you mean we're sexual beings? You see? Just a moment. Somebody's walking in my front door and I don't know anybody. Hello? Yes.
I finally.
Hey, I'm doing a class right now, so I can't chat right now. Just 2 minutes actually.
Okay.
So
For the class?
yeah, I'll be done with the class.
Sorry.
No worries.
We'll be splitting up today.
Okay, or you can come in the living room if you like. I'll be done in a moment. Okay. Sorry about that. Just normally I would have just let it go on, but someone was coming in my front door. I was like, I'm the only one living here. Who's that? All right. It's someone who I saw earlier in the day who decided to drop in. All right. So this idea of sexuality, it's important to talk about. I don't like talking about it because I always get in trouble with it, but it's such a dominant theme in this country, in our culture. It's everywhere all the time, unrelegated, just everywhere. It's such a strange culture because we're so conservative in one sense, and yet our billboards, our movies, our books, our TV shows, it's like they completely just run over all of those boundaries. And yet we still are holding up this Puritan idea all the time, which it's no wonder we're going insane. Really.
Yeah, but look at Swamiji, where before he would change the side of the street, and then, then he just walked down the street, didn't even probably see it or care.
No, it's what he said. He said when I was a young man, if I was walking on the street and I was going to pass a theater, I would cross the road, because of that impurity. But he says now, as an adult, he says I could be roommates with a prostitute and be unbothered, right? Because again, circumstance and condition is not our purity. The mind is our purity, right? What we do with the mind and with ourselves in that sense. And so, we don't want to be, what is that word? A prude. That's not necessary to have judgment for anybody like that. But we're not bothered by those things. We know that those things are just things, and that their fulfillment is very short-lived, and that their pleasures are last about as long as you can jump, you know. And so, having seen those things and ever understood those things, our minds are free of them. We don't judge them. We don't run away in fear from them. We're like, clutch our pearls. It's not like that at all. That's if you're doing that, then there's something else going on in the mind that
Something
needs more work.
kind of specific to, being an alcoholic, I can go and take a nap on the beer aisle and it doesn't affect me in the slightest, but people still assume that you would freak out. But used to was totally obsessed, but once the obsession is removed, then you're pretty much immune
Yeah,
to
and
it.
that's what discernment. Yeah, you're right. That's absolutely true. But don't do it prematurely. Actually, don't do it if it's ever your choice. Don't choose to go sleep in the beer aisle whether you're alcoholic or not, don't play with fate. Always take your caution,
Oh yeah, there's no.
but don't be afraid. Go
I'm just
forward.
saying it just you don't even notice it.
That's right. Because this is where your purity is, right? So the condition of your mind is very important. Place your attention on things that are helpful to you in manifesting your nature, love, wisdom, and being. Anything that occurs in the mind that's not helpful to that end, just don't place your attention on it. That's all. You know, if your mind goes there and it seems to keep pulling you back there and won't let you go, at that point, put mother in your mind, turn to her, tell her in words out loud, I take refuge in you, and then begin repeating the mantra, right? And find some way of putting your mind on something different. Repeat the mantra and then read a page out of the gospel, or grab $5 out of the cookie jar and go give it to someone on the street somewhere to serve them, anything, whatever your tricks might be. All right, we're going to stop there today.